neutral is another word. Neutral. Permissive. Okay? Which means it's not a mitzvah necessarily, and it's not necessarily an avera. There's a neutral ground of activities that people are involved in that you could actually turn them into mitzvahs, or, God forbid, you can turn them into averas. Right?
And what was that one called? I'm sorry.
We call it in Hebrew reshus, which means it's like permission, permissive, but it's a neutral activity. It's like, playing tennis, eating, golfing, working, all the things that people basically do. It's a mundane activity. It's not a holy activity. It's a mundane activity. But now this neutral ground is where all of the sport is. This is where this is where the meat is. Well, there's a lot of meat in the mitzvahs, okay? But the mitzvahs now require, it's better if you have what we call intention when you do a mitzvah, that you are doing a mitzvah. By the way, the word mitzvah does not mean commandment, okay? Pop that bubble again. Come keep popping bubbles all day. Woo! It doesn't mean commandment. Oh, what are you saying, Rabbi? Okay? We got to retrain everybody. That's right. Okay? Mitzvah means connection. Litzavot means to connect, to join together. It's a joining. Okay? The Zohar actually calls them advice. And Pikudim has two words that it calls a mitzvah. Advice and Pikud. Pikudim, which means also deposit. Deposit, which means what it is, it's an activity that within that activity is deposited infinite light, is deposited in that activity. Okay? It's a connection to the divine, to infinite light, or deposit, meaning deposited in activity is the infinite light. And that, unless you do it, that's why we said naseh v'nishma, we will do it and then we will hear, when we were at Mount Sinai. Are you familiar with that? When God wanted to offer the Torah, we said we will do first and then we will hear, which means, in other words, we're not going to be able to hear it unless we do it first. In other words, you can't go to the Tai Chi class, sit there with your latte, drink it while everybody's practicing, and after they're done, you're going, yeah, that was a great workout, while you're drinking your latte, talking on your cell phone, watching everybody do Tai Chi. You're not going to get the benefit of the exercise unless you do the exercise. Everybody understands that, right? So the mitzvahs are the same. You're not going to get any benefit watching someone else do it. You got to do it. You got to get out there. You got to do it. You're not going to access that light. You're not going to connect. Okay? That's what mitzvah means. Okay? Got to shed off that commandment. Okay? Yeah.
I want to get back to the word for permissive. Does it begin with a resh?
Yes. Resh, shin, vav, taf.
Thank you.
Okay? Now I forgot where I was.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We had it.
Oh, hey, sorry.
Deposit.
Mitzvah. It's great if you have kavana, which means you're focused. I know I'm doing this because God says so. So therefore, by doing this, I'm going to connect because I'm connecting to God's will. This is God's will for me, and I'm doing the right thing. There's a lot of joy in doing the right thing. A lot of joy. Knowing you're doing the right thing at the right time. But if you don't have intention, you still get benefit. Okay? It still will benefit you, this activity. Okay? Things which are forbidden, let's go to this. I never gave you the definition of for things that are forbidden, or we'll call it transgression, is called aswer. And here's we get to a deep concept here, okay, which he spoke about here, which aswer, which means forbidden, but that's not really the word aswer, what it means. Aswer means bound.
Bound?
Bound.
Oh, like in the morning prayers. He releases the bound.
Very good. Awesome.
Yeah.
As opposed to things which are mutter or heter, mutter, which means unbound. So what does it mean by a forbidden activity is called bound? Okay? So here we get to a very classic, Kabbalistic rule that was expressed by the Hasidic masters in all of the holy books, is that we are here to elevate the sparks. We are here to elevate things. no matter where we go, right? No matter where the Jew goes, he is elevating things. Even if he doesn't even really think about it, no matter where we go, we always will elevate the situation. I'm talking about even globally, okay? No matter what country we go into, we get into things, even though we're not so religious, we get into the structure or, the infrastructure of how their society is, and we elevate the society. We make things better. It's just a natural kind of thing. But really what it is, it's in the deep spiritual senses, we're taking the sparks and we're elevating the sparks of the mundane, of what we call the heter. Heter means it's untied. Those which are forbidden is tied, which means we cannot elevate those. They are bound. If there's a package which is tied up, right? That means it's bound. That means it's not your place to elevate. This activity, this object, is not for you to elevate. Okay? As opposed to something which is untied. It is mutter. It has heter. It's untied. That's where our game field is, where we have a special opportunity to take it and elevate it. And that's what I'm talking about by the middle section, right? Remember I said there's mitzvah, there's asur, avera, and then there's the neutral domain of activities that we're involved in most of the time, which is it's a heter, it's mutter, which is those is where we have the ability to elevate it. But comes the caveat is you have to have it in mind that you're elevating it. It comes natural, but then it's not so. It's not really. Okay? It's difficult. Then it's difficult. See, the idea here is we say, since Adam sinned in the Garden of Eden, we were taught that his soul exploded all over the planet. Okay? Into sparks. It's like taking a glass, you shatter it, and it goes everywhere, right? So what happens when you take that glass and shatter it and it goes everywhere? You got to clean it up, right? You got to get a broom. You got to go and get every single corner where those little fragments are hanging out and sweep them up. Mankind, really, the Jewish people, one reason why we're in exile, and the exile has been so long, and why we're sent out to Houston, of all places, right, is to gather back all of those sparks of divinity, okay? But the energy of gathering works in a greater degree, when we have what we call kavana, or intention, okay? So that's why all of this, the last line, he says, all of this applies to foods that are permitted and kosher, not foods which are forbidden. You cannot elevate lobster in the all-you-can-eat lobster buffet. It's not going to work, okay? As a matter of fact, you're going to drive the klipa and your soul into the klipa, the husks of darkness, to a greater degree, okay? So all of this applies to foods that are permitted. It's mutter, the package is open. We are able to elevate it. And kosher, which the Holy One commanded us to uplift from the physical to the spiritual. Okay? So when we say a blessing, and also there's other kavanot that we have to have. I'm giving you like a 4-part series in one class. Okay? When we have in mind we're going to eat this food, and there's different levels of intention when you eat food. Okay? Now, a person can obviously, in this neutral zone we're talking about, can eat food because he's hungry, right? Feed me, right? Or a person can approach food with a different attitude. I'm eating this in order to get energy, in order to do good deeds in the world. Okay? That's a simple thought, right? And it takes unbelievable training, because we're so habituated to just grab the bagel and go, right? And meanwhile, you have to understand, even if you don't do it, before the blessing, and while you're eating the bagel, and the last bite of the bagel, maybe you'll remember, I'm eating this in order, what? To get energy, in order to do God's will in the world. In order to bring God's glory by being a good person in the world.
In order to connect.
In order to connect. I'm telling you, I've got... Okay, so let's go on, right? I was going to tell you about the Baba Sali diet. Maybe I'll tell you about the Baba Sali diet. The Baba Sali was the greatest Kabbalist to live the last generation. He was from Morocco originally, and he lived in I forgot the city, south of Israel, right? Kfar Saba. No, not Kfar Saba. Sorry, I forgot. Beersheba. He lived in Beersheba. His town was south. And he was said to be a miracle worker. People would come to him for blessings of all people who needed help in all directions. And he was unbelievable. One of these Baal Mofes, we call a miracle worker, right? He was the guy who could, a room full of people. He has one bottle of arak. Arak is like this licorice vodka, right? And you cover it with a rag, and then everybody would have a glass about this big, and he filled every single person's glass in the room. You're talking about 100 people. He filled it. He filled every person's glass with one bottle. He covered the bottle and did this. People saw this. People were in the room. This is not some story from people who are around who tell this story. And then he put the bottle on the table, you take it off, and there's still a half a bottle there. Okay? I knew the nephew of the Baba Sali. His name was Rabbi Professor Amram Abu Chatzera. Okay, so he was a doctor, a naturopath, very into alternative forms of healing. I trained under him, and he would frequent his uncle on several occasions, and he told us the story that he would go, and the wife of the Baba Sali would go to him and going, "You have to talk to my husband. You have to talk to him." And he goes, "Why?" "Because he only eats a half-cooked carrot in the morning and a half-cooked carrot in the evening. And that's all he eats. You got to do something. Tell him to eat more. He's not eating." Now, Professor Amram knew exactly what the deal is. He's not going to mess with the Baba Sali. He's not going to tell him he has to eat more. Because he understood that, really, Einstein has said that if you could take the atomic energy of a piece of wood, you could ignite an entire city, if we can harness that. So the Baba Sali, according to the formula that we say here, with this blessing that he says over this, and his intention was very deep and very lofty, okay? But with his intention of the blessing that he said over this half-cooked carrot was all the energy that his soul needed to go ahead and charge him for a day, or a 12-hour period, for him to go ahead and run his body and still have vitality and energy. It's the new diet. We're all doing it tomorrow. Baba Sali, half-cooked carrot. Okay? Here you go. We're at a restaurant, Baba Sali's. Okay? That's all it is cooked carrots. Okay? So in any
Don't
case...
give any ideas to the airlines,
Yeah. I'm on the Baba Sali menu list.
Yes.
I ordered the Baba Sali menu, Baba Sali
Oh, they will
meal.
be happy to provide you without order. They already do.
So, in any case, if we can just really say the blessings on the food with the intensity, of course, to reach that level is a very, very high level. Don't try it at home, okay? But I'm just giving you the idea, the concept of what soul food is and the potential of really having that soul food, of really connecting to that piece of fruit, and how we're going to take it to another level, okay? So this is what is written. I'm on the next page, page 3, you have it there, okay? This is what is written, "And he humbled you and caused you to hunger." That was the beginning of the verse. "For the manna was extremely spiritual, and the base people were not satisfied with it, and they said, 'Our souls loathe this miserable bread.'" Right? Thus it says, "And fed you with manna that was extremely spiritual, the bread of the mighty, lechem abirim." It was the bread of the angels, right? "However, it became concretized somewhat so that they could grasp it, in order that what? That he make known to you," this is the rest of the verse, "that even when you enter the land of Israel and you eat physical bread, you should place the honor of your souls before the honor of your bodies," which is really the tikkun of Adam in the Garden of Eden. Okay? Adam wanted to do a trick. He wanted to put the body before the soul. When they ate from that tree of knowledge, they knew exactly what they were doing, because they wanted to overcome the challenge of the body influence. They wanted to let the body have they were thinking was going to be, and it is, a temporary influence. However, temporary for us has been 6,000 years, okay? For him, he was hoping to overcome the challenge, right? Become a heroin addict and overcome it. Not so easy, okay? But here, when you come into the land, you should place the honor of your souls before the honor of your bodies and uplift everything from physical to spiritual. That's what we, the Jews, do. For why? For not by bread alone. That is, when it is merely physical, without awakening its spiritual component. In other words, if you don't say the blessing, does the man live? It's just dead bread. Okay? That is the soul. Here's the answer to our original question. When it says not by bread alone does the man live, but I'd rather, okay? The man, whereas is called the soul. In other words, when this verse says not by bread alone does the man live, the is talking about the man, which means your soul. Not by bread alone does the soul live. Whereas the body is called the flesh of man, basar adam, and has a different connotation when you see that in the Chumash. When you see that in the 5 books of Moses, when it gives a reference to basar, which means flesh of man, that refers to the body. When it says the man, it's referring to the spiritual aspect of the person, i.e. the soul. So now the verse continues, but by every word that leaves the mouth of God, for when you pronounce the name of God, with concentration in the blessing that you make over the food, you arouse its spirit, the spirit that is in the food. From this lives the man, the soul. Meaning everything comes, the soul, which is sustained by the spiritual component in the food. God arranged this precise intention, for by creating worlds and destroying them, sparks of holiness fell into the 4 parts of creation: mineral, vegetable, animal, and human. And it is fitting for a person to uplift them. Okay? Sparks fell into all of those elements. And this is what sustains the soul, is when we have the intention to elevate those aspects in it. We're going to go a step further. Okay, this is like a parable of a king who lost a precious stone from his ring. Even though myriads of servants, officers, sages, governors, and military lieutenants stood before him at that time, he did not command any of them to search for the gemstone, but told only his beloved son, and only his beloved and only son to search, find, and return it to him. Even though the king fully trusted that his attendants and service would all return the stone if they found it, nevertheless, he did not want them to look for it, for he wanted his beloved son to take the credit, and so that the found item, it be called in his name. Not only that, he gave his son several hints as to its location, for the king knew where it was the whole time. He did everything in order to reward his beloved son, and to take great pride and delight in him, saying, "See, no one in the world could have found the stone except my son." Hence, we are the son, and the king is God, and there's a precious stone that we are on a mission to go and get. The meaning of this parable is clear. The creation of the worlds was in order for the Israelite nation to sort out the sparks of holiness from permitted and kosher foods. As the sages said, for the sake of Israel, meaning Bereshit bara Elokim, that is called the beginning. In other words, the word Bereshit in the very beginning of the Chumash, the first words of Genesis, it says Bereshit bara Elokim. The word Bereshit is a word that baffles all of the commentators, because really the writing there doesn't fit. Believe it or not, the word Bereshit has to come right after this word of Bereshit, which means in the beginning, has to come a noun. It's like I say, and the beginning of blank, God created the heavens and the earth. In other words, can you imagine writing a book, a bestseller, and the second word in your book is a blank? Right? That's what really, if you look at the Chumash, If you really look at those first words, it's really what's there. There's a blank after the first word. So they have to go like this and scramble, and they kind of dig and finally go, okay, we scan through the entire Chumash and we have some sources here. How do we can put this verse together where it's somewhat understandable? And it really says, well, but the word Bereshit or Reshit is called Israel. Israel is called Reshit in another verse somewhere else. So they go and plug it in, do some little like algebra kind of stuff. And you say, now we can understand the word, the verse. For Israel, the world is the heavens and the earth is created. That's what the word Reshit is. You kind of plug it in from a meaning from somewhere else. In any case, okay? Meaning, we have a job to do. Go to the last page here, page 4. Thus, the Baal Shem Tov commented on the verse, hungry and also thirsty.
It's on page 4.
What, is it on the back side?
No.
No.
You can't look on
It's
yours.
blank.
Oh, here, I got an extra. Don't know why you didn't get. I got 2 extras. You guys have to share. Really, it's blank? Shame. You're going to have to listen, okay? So thus the Baal Shem Tov commented on the verse, hungry and also thirsty, their souls faint in them. He explained here a great secret. Why did God create various types of food and drink that human beings desire? Why? Because they contain sparks of Adam in the Garden of Eden. Like I said, shattered glass, his soul shattered, and all the pieces went flying all over the world, including the foods. Because they contain sparks of Adam, the first man, that became enclosed in the mineral, vegetable, and animal and human levels. And that they long, these elements, these pieces, to become attached to holiness. In other words, the physical food itself, the animals, the vegetables, the minerals, they all want to be attached to holiness. If you be able to really listen real closely to that carrot, you'd be able to listen with special hearing ability, the carrot would be saying, eat me, okay? Okay. Please eat me in holiness. Please have in mind. Don't have in mind. Make sure you have in mind, right? Please say a bracha, please. I want to get elevated because there's soul elements in that, believe it or not. They arouse we call the feminine waters. Feminine waters is our willingness, our desire to become attached to God. In the mystery of the sage's statement, a drop does not descend from above that does not have 2 drops rising to meet it. You know, even fish, when it rains, the fish come up to the surface to drink the new water that comes. They're living in water, and it's not enough for them. We should never be satisfied with what we have and always crave for more. There's not enough God you can have in your life. Everything a person eats and drinks contains his very sparks that he needs to repair. Thus it is written, hungry and also thirsty, for a person hungers and thirsts for them. Also, listen, we are attracted to those foods. Why are we attracted to those foods? Because elements of our own soul are in those foods. Why do I love coffee so much? Because there's holy sparks in that coffee that I also need for me to get my completion. As well as the coffee also says, oh man, take me in. Take me in, right? I can't wait to get inside of you and then thinking holy thoughts together, right? But the person himself has elements of himself scattered. You yourself, or let's say you are a soul element, but you also need to gather and complete yourself, and we gather it through the sparks, through the foods that we are attracted to. Because in those foods that we are attracted to have the elements of our soul locked within them. Right? And it says, his soul is enwrapped in them for the mystery of exile, which is in a garment. He took her for a prostitute because her face was covered. This is talking about Yehuda and Tamar. An interesting incident, all of a sudden, they love to take you off a cliff, these Hasidic masters. Where? What happened here? Yehuda and Tamar, the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Yehuda, who was married to the sons of Yehuda, but they kept dying. Right, and Yehuda basically just said, "Go home, and I'll call you when the younger son is old enough." All right, and never called, of course, and she realizes what the plan is. So she got her own plan together. She recognized Yehuda was from such a holy spark. She recognized that Yehuda had the Davidic dynasty, the soul of the Mashiach was going to come through her. She understood it. She knew it. So she made herself to be like the prostitute, and God let happen whatever happened with Yehuda. Don't go asking, okay? That's pre-Sinai activities. It's a big difference between pre-Sinai, meaning the event that happened at Sinai, to after the event at Sinai. In any case, what happened was that he had relations with Tamar, and from her came out parrots who descended eventually King David, who descended from Yehuda, and the Mashiach, the Messiah, will also come from that. In other words, here comes a garment or something, or she actually